Hello and welcome to another episode of the TF Cast. Today's date is December 15th, 2021.
Today with us, we have guest Gina Moorhead from the Union Market and a number of other projects around town. Recently in the news because the shop was closed down, but we're here to talk about that experience and what it was like, what's the future for you and your vendors, and a whole bunch of different things. So just give us a little bit of the rundown about, what happened over the last couple weeks and how things have been over at the market.
I think there's a big story to tell, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really happy to hang out with you guys.
Thanks for joining.
And so Union Market Mankato closed its brick and mortar doors December 1st is when we started packing. We still have the online shop, unionmarketmankato.com. Plug. But so the idea was to obviously stay through Christmas. The idea was to stay. What happened was I signed a lease for the space in January 2020, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's dates are all mixed up.
That's the start of the pandemic year, right? That's
I
before
signed the date. I signed the lease the date of the 30th of January. On the 31st, COVID was named a worldwide crisis.
That's like day of almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the shops didn't shut down, and people were kind of wondering, what's happening.
Yeah.
Until everything was shut down. What was that? It was early March 8th or so.
I think when was the oh shit day for us was like literally
March 13th.
Yeah, it was St. Patrick's Day. It was the day before St. Patrick's Day where I was like, oh, we're not going to have bars for St. Patrick's.
And I was
literally
right around then too.
I was going to say, I was literally stuck in a cabin in Colorado when the announcement
was. Yeah, we were working at
Mankato Brewery.
And they canceled NBA or whatever. But
yeah, I was like,
I think
dude.
You were getting ready for a small business Saturday launch right around that time, I think, too. And the small business Saturday had to either be postponed or like shifted because of the like new pandemic.
I think that's true. Yeah. So what happened was I signed the lease late January for the start date to be the 1st of March.
Okay.
Right? So I was going to move in the 1st of March.
Yeah.
Yay. How that happens. And the intention was to be closed for about 6 weeks or so. And because we wanted to, there were no dressing rooms, there were no doors. It was just wide open, right? Big open space, 4,000 square feet. So we wanted to close to paint the walls and do some of the branding elements that would just be easy if it was a blank space. Create an office, create a little back room for people to have small parties or gatherings or meetings. And so 2 things happened. Obviously, the pandemic happened. But in order for us to do the construction, we needed building materials. And if you remember, back then, there were fires in California and the price of lumber doubled and it wasn't going to be able to be shipped in time and da-da-da-da-da. So even if the lumber did ship in time, were we going to be able to have a construction worker, in the space? Was I going to be able to be in the space with them? Did they have to be there alone? So on and so forth. So it's just this big, like, hurry up and wait game. It's always fun to play. We've all played that once or twice.
Yeah.
So we were waiting to start construction for months. Finally, we were able to, get some walls up, and once things were, greenlit, then they really did happen pretty fast. But we were behind by a few months at the very start. So, we finally did open September 15. So bars and restaurants and retail stores could open in June, I believe. We weren't ready, and so we opened September 15th. And it was great. We had an awesome month. We had an even better October, an even better November, a really great December. And then let's see but for the first, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, we started off being behind in rent,
Yeah.
and we were getting some income coming in from this angel investor. So I didn't think that I was going to qualify for a PPP because, we still had our jobs. Payroll was in action, so hindsight's 2020, obviously. I think that, now knowing what I do know, I think that we would have qualified and so on and so forth. But so there's this perfect little thing that's called the EIDL loan now, and that's EIDL. It's, emergency loan for past rent and past wages. But whatever you need, but it's in the past, so you need to show that you were behind in these specific ways. Anyway, so that's on its way, and the angel investor that has been super supportive and really wonderful through this entire process is the owner of the building itself. And he, wanted this community to thrive and wanted there to be, not just this like really cool shop on the street, but the comic book store and the coffee shop and then another coffee shop and, see that place grow and thrive. Yeah. So, I get lost in my own story sometimes.
So
the investor was also the owner of the building?
The owner of the building, but not the leasing agent.
Oh.
So the leasing agent is supposed to be the person that gives me the keys, provides, the common areas are clean, paper towels, toilet paper, blah, 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 all that jazz, for the common areas and for the building at whole. And if there's, flooding in the basement or if the shovel or if the sidewalk needs to be shoveled or whatever, that's their
responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
I moved in and it was this 10,000 square foot. Well, I didn't move in. Okay. I started, this was even a year before I took over ownership. I started being involved in the market as just the general manager. There was no owner. There was no DBA. It was just a little project that the leasing agency, CBC, wanted to have. They wanted to create this market in Mankato where there'd be a whole bunch of micro stores.
Yeah.
And people would rent out their square footage, have their own hours, do their own thing. It's more successful if there's borders and walls and security. In which, when they first wanted to open, there was none of that.
Yeah.
They wanted one vendor at a time to move into this 10,000 square foot wide open space and not only pay like exorbitant prices for rent, and I've done plenty of pop-up shops and hosted plenty of trade shows in the cities in Seattle and in my background in fashion design. The prices that they were asking for are just like unattainable.
How much can a vendor typically determine to make? Because I've heard of people, I know they do stuff like that over at Vagabond Village. You can rent like a little bit of space or something. And like what is exorbitant prices when it comes to like that kind of space?
Well, they wanted to rent out like the 2 spots in the front windows. They wanted to rent a 20 by 20 space for $1,500. And then the prices go down as you get further back. But okay, so say I move in as a fashion designer, right? And I have my racks and I have my table and I have my, here's my little pop-up shop or whatever. That's not a pop-up because it's a permanent thing because I pay my rent monthly and I'm not going anywhere. I don't just bring in my stuff and bring it out. Okay, so then what if I'm the only person in there for months and it's just me in this little corner by myself,
Yeah.
Sure.
That's not really...
And that's kind of...
What's the vision there? That looks like okay, so then let's say that you guys move in and you have your studio next to mine.
Yeah.
But you want to operate on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I'm not going to operate on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Hmm.
So there's no walls. There's no security. So it wasn't a good plan,
So
you know?
for people that may be unfamiliar, if they've only been in there recently, or maybe they didn't see it earlier, like it was the one entrance and then
Right.
it was wide open,
Right.
except for a little bit of separation in the back, which was at that time a yoga studio.
Yeah, and it still is a yoga studio. It's just no longer Sun Moon Yoga. Now it's
Yeah.
rented out by the YMCA.
And
So,
so,
yeah.
like you're saying too, is that operations became basically impossible because of scheduling issues with like having someone be there all the time and stuff.
Right. And then you
Yeah.
walk in the door and let's say that you're, someone wants to shop with me and then they want to shop with you and then they want to shop with them, but their hours aren't the same as mine. And then they have to do a transaction with you and a transaction with me and a transaction, so it's a flea market, it's a flea market that has no safety and security, basically.
It sounds like what maybe happened then, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you tried to change the dynamics of the space and make it the union market. Is that
Right.
Is that a transition that kind of happened?
So I pitched the idea that, bring me on as the general manager. I'll take care of one transaction, one counter, and these different vendors who they can't like pay for square footage and, be the makers themselves and be the shopkeepers themselves. And, it's just, so I'll be the shop girl. I'll take in all the transactions. I'll divvy up who gets what, and then I'll send out checks to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
And in replacement, give me my space for free. And then the owner of the building was like, well, let's get this place up and running. So if you need to kick her some money, do it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll pitch in. Let's just get this place open. So it was supposed to coming soon, opening November 2018. We finally came to a deal in June, and we opened in June 2019. Right. They were looking for 20 by 20 spaces. Didn't really get all that many vendors for a 20 by 20. So then they went down to 10 by 10. Then they went down to 5 by 5. And having a 5 by 5 space is like a shelf.
Yeah, that's
because you need room
interesting.
around it. So you have thousands of items of inventory for all these different vendors, even if they have a 5 by 5 space. And then I'm supposed to take in the inventory and I'm supposed to pay them back. And so they signed 40 leases within the space and was just like, oh, just go talk to Gina and she'll get your inventory in like this, And I'm like, I'm a bit behind.
Is that a model that is typically used for that sort of thing? Is that something you're familiar with, or do you think it was a new approach to trying to manage a market like that?
Well, I think that they're in the business of renting space and they're not in the business of retail or small business
So it
ownership.
almost doesn't have to make sense in
Yeah,
translation.
they just wanted to rent out square footage on the floor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
And
they got you to manage it, so.
yeah, that's true. That's true. So by the end of January, by the end of the year, they decided that 40 leases is too much to manage in one space. So we're going to close the concept. Gina, would you like to take on the space? You know more about this building than, anybody. Because, I got the toilet paper. I put the soap dispensers on the wall. Like, I installed the toilet paper rolls. Like, not sure what the property managers did, but it's a little sensitive.
Yeah.
So I took on the 4,000 square foot space because at that time, the Rose Room had rented out the 2,000 square feet on the other side, which was great. They're fantastic individuals.
Are they still?
Yeah, yep.
Cool.
And the YMCA is still in the back. So those are still in operation, but the market side is pretty dark and empty. Wah, wah.
Well, sorry,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I know that what the market had begun to symbolize for people was really like a cool spot to go shop for it was a unique space in Mankato, certainly. Like, I think that you couldn't go to a different store. The only other ones that are even similar are maybe like Vagabond Village or some of the other like thrift shoppy things, but I think you had a very
sure.
different styling and approach towards doing it. So I think it was becoming a very nice space in Mankato where it had a reputation for having
Yeah.
nice things and being
Thank
worth
you.
checking out. So when I walked by and I saw everything kind of taken down, it was a little sad to see.
Yeah, we wanted it to kind of look like sort of a throwback to a general store, like a little department store, because people were attached to the idea that it was micro stores. But I didn't want everything to be so segregated. I wanted, the garden section to be all garden stuff, and the kids section to be all kid stuff, accessories and menswear and vintage and women's wear and, designer resale and art and gifts and kitchen and apothecary. I mean,
Yeah.
So it was user friendly, it was easy to shop instead of like, oh, is this a different vendor, or do I have to buy this here and then move on, or so I wanted it to be more of like a department store, a general store, because we're in Mankato and
Well, it did feel that way. It felt that way the last few times that I went in.
for sure.
It was,
Yeah.
But
I wanted to brighten it up and modernize it and have it be well curated and look like, when I go to the Art Institute or some art museum, I love checking out the gift shop because it just feels like everything is special and of value and tells a story. So I wanted to brighten it up and have it not be this like country chic, vibe. I wanted it to be more modern and very lush, green plants everywhere. And I think we kind of nailed it, And so we had about 75% of the merchandise was wholesaled, so I didn't rent out space to anybody. I curated the merchandise. I chose what local vendors I wanted to bring in on consignment, but I didn't make them pay for rent,
Okay.
So then it would be essentially like a 50-50 split. So it's pretty much wholesale, but it's easier for them if they want to rotate their inventory, and it's easier for me for startup costs, essentially,
So that they were getting paid when their stuff was taken off the shelf.
Correct.
Basically.
Yep. And 60% of what was in the shop was from Minnesota. So 75 was wholesaled, 60% was from Minnesota. Of course we started at home. We started in Mankato, and then who can we find and then, go out a little bit further, New Ulm and, the cities and Moorhead and Duluth and we had quite a number of really fabulous Minnesota artists and small businesses.
Yeah.
And then we also jumped on board with the it's this 14% pledge, 15%, but 14% pledge, where that percent of products on your shelves are owned by black owned businesses.
Cool.
So that was started by this young woman in New York, and I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. Even if we're just a little mom and pop shop, we're not Dayton's or Saks or whatever, but it's,
well, when
you have to have your morals.
Curating your market, and you can probably do things like that are a little bit more flexible. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it sounded like you changed up the business model a little bit when you took over management of it and went from like a large number of leases into you handling
just me having
that,
the lease,
and then basically taking a lot of those other business administration things and making them on back end for you.
Way more streamlined.
And did that solve a lot of problems, or did that create its own problems?
I think it solved a lot of problems because it really freed up my time instead of having to manage everybody's inventory. I was able to streamline it. And just put it into one big system, one big list, instead of like everyone having their own list and everyone having their own, yeah.
Because before they were getting rented out a spot of the store, and they would have to come in and
Right,
monitor it, and then you had your separate
right. And then,
transaction situations and scheduling. So
well, and
okay.
like I wouldn't be able to, as the general manager, that was their square footage. And so it wasn't okay for me to zhuzh it, or merchandise it. So if somebody dropped off their stuff and didn't come back for 6 months, and
it would just be a stale part of the
it's
store.
just this totally stale
Yeah.
part, but I can't do anything about it because I'm not renting that space,
Yeah.
And so some people were super involved and some people dropped off their stuff like it was a garage sale, But
And that situation specifically get better when you changed the model? Did
why?
enthusiasm from the like artists and creators kind of, were they more into it?
I mean, I only invited people back who I knew were interested and involved,
Okay. So it got better by you filtering a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how many vendors were involved towards the end of the thing?
75.
Oh.
75. And these are
Not necessarily all from Minnesota,
Mhm.
Some of the, a lot of the vendors are what I wholesaled, to fill in the blanks. Because if we didn't have, I don't know, if we needed something in the apothecary section and we couldn't necessarily get it from Minnesota, then I would search for other places. But all the brands, had a good give back program and, had their ethics and ethos that we really believed in, that we really thrived with.
So what is going on with the brands now, and like what happened with at the end in general? Like when you have like all of these different people who have their property there,
Right.
like how, like what happens in situations like that?
Well, for the property that I didn't own, that I didn't buy outright, I just got to talk to them and say, hey, we got the rug slipped out from under us and we have a lot to talk about, but I need you to come pick up your stuff and I'm so sorry, but let's have lunch later. But, if you could come pick up your belongings, then that would be great. So let's just start there,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that was 14 days ago. Yeah, so it's all cleared out now. And then the rest we packaged up. I have it in a little storage warehouse kind of a thing, to do online sales and so on and so forth. But yeah, so we packaged everything up. We moved everything the next day. We sold a bunch of fixtures the next day. That Saturday and Sunday we were up in the cities to do pop-ups. And then Monday I came back and it's just been like one day at a time.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There is a big part of it that like, I got word on the 30th of November at 7 p.m. that the owner of the building was like, at that point he said, my hands are tied and I can't tell CBC to wait anymore. Whereas I had always followed his word, and what he said in early October was that, you can wait until we can wait for you until January 1st. So I was working with the Small Business Administration and the finance department and to get this loan and to sort of fast track it, and was working one-on-one with, this remarkable individual. And yeah, but then we got, so we were okay with the building owner and we weren't okay with the leasing agency. So there's some disconnect, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a shame, it's really a shame. So
Yeah.
That's what caught me about the story in general. Like when I saw the KYC stuff, I was like, why? Like two things about it didn't really make sense to me. Is one, that it was a surprise to you in any capacity. And the other, that if they were looking to collect money that was previously owed, like why they would
close
want-
during Christmas.
Why would they want to make that decision? It seems like the least likely path with which they
to
would
get
do
more
that.
money back? Yeah.
Yeah. So
So-
I was looking at it like it like kind of baffled me.
Well, yeah, and when I was talking to the owner of the building, he's like, "You're good until January 1st," and so I always was reliant on his word because he could kind of get the dogs to stop barking a little bit.
Mhm.
And then the November 30th, he's like, "Shoot, like my hands are tied," and I and at that point, like whatever he said after that, I mean, my ears were ringing because I everything went static. I'm like, this is what this is what shock feels like. I'm pretty sure,
Yeah.
I think I'm in shock, So, and then CBC Fisher Group was like, please be out by 8:30 tomorrow morning, December 1st. And I'm like, okay,
Like, that
like
sounds-
I will try,
Thanks.
called me, they're at the door at 8:30 in the morning, and they called me and they're like, so we're here and we're here to pick up the keys, and it looks like you haven't started packing and like nothing has moved. And I'm like, yeah, no crap.
Like, yeah, sorry, I didn't call my like 40-person team in to come do it last night.
I mean, yeah.
Well,
So
Did this stuff all got out safe? Like people have their products now returned
Correct.
to them.
Yep.
And everything is good in that regard.
Yep.
Um,
Yep, that's right.
But what's going on with a lot of those people? I mean, did a lot of those folks have single outlets there, or were they selling on their own?
Yeah, it's actually I mean, my heart is just goes out to these individuals because like they didn't have a brick and mortar themselves, and they are local and they're here and they're so extraordinarily talented. And last year, most of their business outside of the market was on fairs and festivals, which didn't exist, right? This year, they were able to go to some fairs and festivals unless they got pregnant and had a baby or got sick or what, a handful of other things. And so the market was really a lifeline for a lot of them. And I invited a couple of, my very favorite people to participate in the KUIC interview. And yeah, my heart just like melted, because I'm like, I want to help. I'm such a small business advocate and creative small business advocate. And at that point I was just like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your hands were actually tied. Like there's nothing you can do in that scenario.
Right,
beyond,
yeah.
Respond and organize to what's happening
And figure out what the next game plan is, you know?
I'm sure everyone has the exact same questions too, because reading it, I was,
A lot of it didn't add up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you have a news story and if they give you 2.5 minutes, that's pretty gracious,
yeah.
Yeah. But you can't tell this whole story in 2.5 minutes. It's not possible.
Exactly. And I guess the odd thing from the story was I after reading what they said, it seemed like there was like a hang up on your loan or something. Like there was some kind of like crosstalk that was going on where
Right.
it's like, I'm waiting for this money to come through, and then they're
Right.
just like, no.
Right.
So
So,
what's
yeah.
going to happen with that money? Is that still something you're applying for? Or?
Yeah, it's still on its way, Union Market Mankato still has the application in for the EIDL loan. And it should be here by the end of the month. So
What is that going to be used for? Is the Union Market going to pop up somewhere else?
that's supposed to be used for back rent and back wages. So that's what the funds were asked for to be allocated for. That's yeah. And then we also applied for a couple loans through Region 9. That's more of a local chapter.
Development stuff, right?
Yeah. So that those two that come through will be helpful in moving forward.
Sure. And what does
Yeah.
moving forward look like?
Honestly, like I love being proactive instead of reactive, but the past couple weeks I have been putting out fires, you know?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not like I'm ignoring the future, but I have kind of been burning the candle at both ends for the last couple of weeks that like,
Mhm.
you know, I crash at 9 p.m. and I hit a wall at the end of the day cuz there's a million loose ends to tie up, you know, still.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, fortunately I have a wonderful support system, you know, within emotional support, legal support, financial support, you know, like
Mm.
friends who want to help me get the message out. Um it really feels good like when your house is on fire and then your friends kind of all come with a bucket, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. So, I feel very lucky.
And the message, you're just talking about getting the message out. Is that like in terms of like the people who you were working with previously, like tying up their loose ends or?
Well, just the message of like, wait, why the heck did it close? You know, because I'm sure everybody has been scratching their heads. Like,
Mm-hmm.
number one, this was a great place. Number two, it's Christmas.
Yeah.
Number three, it seems pretty abrupt, you know?
Mhm.
So I wanted to clear up a little bit like, what happened? Yeah. So we were waiting for the loan to come in, and one party above me said, no problem, I can wait. Another party said,
Yes, problem.
Mm.
GTFO.
Yeah. That unfortunately will
So,
happen from time to time.
yeah. So as far as I know, there's no plans for anything to move into the space. It's not like they had somebody,
Lined up.
lined up. Yeah, looking to rent it for the month of December. I don't know
Yeah.
anybody in their right mind who would rent a space in January or February because it's just not a, so it'll likely sit empty for
A while.
who knows how long. Yeah.
At,
Too bad.
I don't know exactly how to ask this question, but I'm curious about to what level the market was sustainable, either within the context of the leases and things that you had, or maybe outside of it. Like, if you could give me some kind of an idea of whether it was like working well at that level, but the shutdowns were too much for it, or if
Right.
it was
That's
like
a really good question.
kind
And
of
I'm glad you
slightly
asked.
unsustainable because of rent costs or something like
Right.
that. Yeah.
It was an expensive lease.
Yeah.
But every month we were selling more and earning more and bringing in more vendors and rotating out merchandise, and it was getting better and better every month. But we still had those COVID months of 6 months of back rent to pay,
Yeah.
and that it wasn't getting paid off fast enough.
Sure.
So that's what the idle loan was for.
So you were able to show growth, but it wasn't like at such a speed where it was easy for you to
Right.
like write off what was like having horrible shutdowns. Like, you can make that go away.
Right. Having a horrible shutdown
Yeah.
and having, double cost for construction materials.
It changes the P&L on your first couple of years probably a lot.
Right. And if you had more than a year to pay off those COVID loans, like, fine, But we had a matter of months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And retail's pretty quiet in the summertime, unless you're in like a big vacation town. So,
Mhm.
Mankato's a really big, student-driven city.
Yeah.
And professors and everyone who works at the college and participates in academia here is helps sustain the city. And so when everyone went home for June, July, August, then it got pretty quiet, unfortunately.
Mhm.
I do think people always forget that there's like 15,000 students or something. Like, it's
Yeah.
a huge number of people buying
Yeah.
things, and they buy a lot of things because they like show up and need to, pretend live.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know what they do in dorm rooms or whatever, but it's
Were
some
you ever a
intense.
student?
they buy things for the walls, I'm sure.
Yeah. Macrame, hammocks. Yep.
All that
Yeah.
soaps, I'm sure of it.
Soaps. Yep.
With
Art.
that, too, like part of what I think you were trying to do with the market model and a lot of what we've talked about today with like giving artists a place to put their wares where they don't have to staff it, where they don't have to like
Right.
have a POS system, where they don't have to keep track of all their inventory every day, and they can kind of do the thing that they're good at, which is
To make
create
it.
stuff,
Yeah.
and
Create
then
it.
they can have someone support them in the
Mhm.
sale of that. So that seems like a good model, probably. And I would wonder if you have any insight into whether it's a good model given the transition of, I guess it's partially a pandemic transition, but it's been like a long-standing one too, of people going to malls and stuff less,
Mm-hmm.
and generally doing less in-store shopping and more online.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I know because you had an online part too, and the physical space, I wonder if you have any insight into like what that transition was like, either for your store or in
Yeah.
general.
Retail brick and mortar locations are tough, but we really wanted to create more than just a shop where you can buy stuff. We wanted to create a very cool vibe. We wanted it to be really welcoming and comforting. And if you want to host a class or have an event or have a private party, that was something that was available.
Yeah.
Where it was much more interactive than just transactional. So in that regard, I think that those kinds of active spaces that are they can kind of pivot and swerve a little bit easier than or offer more flavor than just a
Department store.
Or a store in the mall. Yeah.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's what people are leaving for online shopping for. Like, there isn't a great experience like picking your favorite toilet paper off the shelf for like the 18,000th time. Like, that's not a shopping experience. Like,
Right.
people want to automate the Jack's Pizza and like the toilet paper and cleaning thing that you buy over and over again.
Right.
And then they want a shopping experience when they're getting something bespoke or
Mm-hmm.
like the other thing. So to me it doesn't make sense to have like when I look at like a Walmart or something, like it's just like
That should just be a warehouse.
yeah, to me it's like that, like when like you think it's kind of silly to have like the button in your pantry you smash to get more Fritos, but like that actually kind of makes sense.
Because it's something that you don't care about.
Yeah, like I don't
There's no commodity,
I don't need to like hold the bag.
Yeah.
Like, as much as new packaging could upset me. Like, I'm really
Right.
most concerned with
To bring it
what's
back
inside.
with the market model too, I think like with the market model, you've got much like it's like a curated list of specific things rather than having like all the general stuff. So you kind of solve
Right.
that problem too. Did you see that in the way that people shopped there and used the store?
I think everyone was really excited to come in and find something special and
Yeah.
find something that they hadn't seen before and also, share and show off like, oh, this artist, this is my my neighbor's brothers, and having that sense of community and being proud to say like, I know this person and this person is in a store and that's awesome and their work is great and here they are and I can hold it in my hand.
Yeah.
People got it though. Like,
They got it. Yeah.
it
I mean,
made sense.
yeah, not everybody, everyone said, some people would come in and be like, is this a thrift shop? and I'm like, or they'd say, is this a flea market? And I'm like, I don't know what a flea market is anymore.
Like, maybe I don't know. I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
It's a nice one.
We don't have fleas. And I would just like groan and cry to my employees. I'd be like, does it look like a flea market? And they're like, Gina, no, that person is off their rocker. This place does not look like a flea market. And I'm like, okay.
We'll have to look up flea market when we're done.
It's not really. We don't really do flea markets here. Not so much.
I
They're,
just
everywhere in
imagine
the South.
walking in and seeing like pallets of birdseed.
No, it is. It
And
is
maybe
like
some live birds
it is just
flying
like
around.
booths of garage sales with people who buy lots of stuff and sell things quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, like a 25-cent teapot that's kind of rusted.
Yeah.
That's what I think of a flea market, like a bunch of garage sale stalls.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so you can understand my
So you're like,
agony when I'm like, there's no teapots that are 25 cents here.
I checked everything for rust.
Yeah. But we have quartz crystal and a hammock.
Yeah.
That's new.
Well, I think we kind of asked already too, but I guess I'd be curious to hear kind of in your own words, like what this is meaning for your direction going forward, whether you feel like it's given you new inspiration to try again in a different way, or whether you're kind of withdrawing from this adventure and reevaluating, or...
I think I am
Okay.
pretty weary of signing a brick and mortar lease.
Mm.
I think that there's a lot of experiences that can be had through pop-up shops. They are exhausting. And it's really hard on the materials and the people because it's just wear and tear, packing in, packing out, packing in, packing out,
Yeah.
And I did my fair share of that with the fashion industry and like lugging, wool coats back and forth. I mean, I'm strong as hell, but it's tiring.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to move up to the cities. I have, a community there and my family's there. And, if I wanted to get back into the fashion industry, then it would be there. But, yeah, I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I know that we'll still operate the market online. We'll likely turn it into a different name like Union Marketplace, instead of Union Potato. But it's been a big learning experience, another, what do they say? Another button on my vest or another feather in my hat or
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I asked too, is I know that you've had a number of different entrepreneurial adventures where like you've done some fashion work, you've done some work with creating clothing, and now this was trying to operate like a market. So kind of pulling that all together, I wonder if you see like a better way to align all those things, or whether you're just like, well,
I think I'm gonna have to make a vision board.
Maybe that's
I went to school for fashion design for 4 years, learned how to be a designer on the computer. Graduated in 2007 when the economy crashed, so first bump in the road, check. Went back to academia, safely in academia to wait it all out. And that's when I got my master's in apparel design. So that's when I was more of the, I was the one-man show in the couture room or whatever, so I learned how to do everything with my own hands, make my own patterns, sew my own things. Everything was, I hired my own models. I produced my own fashion show. I did the hair and makeup or, had that provided. And, and then, got my trademark and registration for Gina Moorhead and went through the intellectual property process and, the Secretary of State and getting the brand finalized. And then, I did a little bit of work. Then I started building my brand, and I would do 2 collections a year, one in spring and summer, one in fall and winter. I found artisan tailors over in Vietnam. So I would go to Vietnam twice a year for a month at a time to build the collection, the samples, and the production for the next year, because you're working a full year out in advance.
Okay.
And then I started doing that for others, so I not only provided the product, but I also provided a service for other brands that didn't have the time to go to Vietnam or weren't comfortable with spending a month away, or but it was really important to me for the quality control and to build those relationships and to be there, instead of just ship it off in an email and complain when it comes back when it's not right. It's like, well, anyway, so got that under my belt.
Yeah.
Did a bunch of pop-ups. I was sort of freelancing in the styling industry as well. So I would do lots of photo shoots and videos, not just for my own brand, but also for bigger companies like 3M and Target up in the cities, as a style assistant. And I really loved that. And to help make, the lookbook or the advertising materials and a little bit of everything in the creative process, participated in pop-up shops, put on my own pop-up shops, did trade shows, and so this was going to be the first like pop-up shop or trade show that was permanent, because I didn't know what else to do in Mankato. I moved here for a significant other and I needed to find my little niche, and I think I found it, but I learned a lot, and something is going to come up on the horizon. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but I'm okay. I'm okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Well,
it's a real bummer that Mankato lost it, because I think it was you did a nice job in kind of pulling together some of your previous experiences and bringing to Mankato something that doesn't exist otherwise. So I think that there'll be a bit of a hole where that may have been, but
yeah,
maybe some other aspiring creator will kind of get the thing going or something.
right.
So
They did ask, the leasing agency asked me if I wanted to move to, I mean, I can't, I don't know if this is like
a different building, maybe less specific, but general.
well, this might, I mean, this is part of the mystery of the whole. I'm trying to piece together some of the information that doesn't quite add up, but they asked me to move out of that space and into a different building on Riverfront. So it could be that, they have plans to develop Front Street into something completely different, because it sure does seem like there's one by one moving out on Front Street in particular, including, I don't, maybe they're just trying to move businesses and kind of play Monopoly and put this here and put that there and change it around as they feel. But, they asked me to move and I said, oh, no, thanks. I kind of like it here. And they've asked another boutique to move, and she said, no, thanks. I like it here. And they're like, oh, it's a cheaper place. And she's like, no, I like it here. And they're like, we really think you should move. And she's like, no, I kind of like it here. And then they raised the rent by like $400, and so I can't speculate, too far, but I don't know what their vision is, why close down stores that people like. It's kind of a profit over people thing.
Yeah, I mean that's landlording in general. Like I would just say that if anything, like generally, especially with a large firm like that, I think anything that's going to come up that's going to make them more money is just going to, like, they want to.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And, if they got someone on the line saying that they love their space,
right?
Maybe it's not enough money.
So I don't know. I can't speculate up and down all day, but it's just there's something. I mean, I want to tell all the story that I can, but there are still some pieces of the story that they don't quite add up for me. So,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I'm just gonna like roll over and die, you know? I mean, like I said, I have a really great support system, and I'm gonna, get to the bottom of it and
Well,
have some legal counsel, for business.
Mm-hmm.
that's also just a very common theme among, people who are working in the creative industries that we hear a lot is like, like everything's going well and then you start to interact more with that overhead.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's when it's you're just dealing with a different type of person in general, like they're no longer concerned and,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure people can gather from my tone how I feel about it, but like it's just, I mean, for them, everything is a bottom line,
Right.
So it is kind of like the never ending fight, like how are we going to find a way to do the things that bring people here and make us happy and,
Right. Instead of just circling the drain.
yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why, we're so highly mobile, is like, all of a sudden, like everything would change if we were working
Sure.
in a studio space that required that, I think.
I think too that's why even just I have some genuine curiosity of your experiences. It seems like you went into what is a pretty traditional retail space with a sort of alternative model, and I think that that's like an interesting case study in what could be done.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your insights and stuff like that too.
What would your advice be for anyone who was looking to, do their own, like move from doing a pop-up shop to a brick and mortar place if they're a individual creative?
I think maybe I would say don't do it alone and don't do it with your own money.
Mm,
um, get someone to finance you, to back you, to support you. Um,
mm,
because your loss is going to be much more substantial,
Mhm.
than if you get to have some more stability from somebody else who is willing
mm,
to try to build the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say don't do it alone. Ask all the questions that you can. Like, be extremely humble, like I decided right away that I was not going to see this as a fear of failure, episode. Like,
mm.
retail's hard. We had a pandemic, there was
Yeah.
everything was stacked against us, um except our amazing customers and good music in the shop and but yeah, like don't see anything as a failure because it is all a learning experience. And somebody
Mhm,
out there has the answer and will give it to you
mm.
because they know more than you and maybe they're retired and they're bored, and like so just don't stop asking for help.
So,
And
Mm.
don't be ashamed to ask for help because that's where you're going to shoot yourself in the foot or be your own speed bump.
and to follow up on that one, what has there been any like institutions or specific things for people who are looking for that type of help in Mankato? Are there any places where you could, suggest that people go or resources?
Well, I've really enjoyed working with the SBA. It's an organization that's a small business administration. It's free, there's regional chapters, so they put you in touch. You send a letter to the director or the president or whatever of the one chapter, and then they put you in touch with somebody who's specifically going to be able to answer your questions. Do you need help writing a
Mm.
grant? Do you need help with QuickBooks? Do you need help with this, that, advertising or anything specific,
Mm.
and then they get you in touch with a pro. Also, specifically here in Mankato, like Visit Mankato and Greater Mankato Growth have been instrumental in like supporting us and coming up with
Mm.
ideas of like, hey, maybe you should do a ribbon cutting, or hey, maybe you should come to this little business happy hour. I'll give you a
Mm.
pass for the first time, or yeah, just reach out to your community and you don't have to feel alone. I mean, I know that a lot of entrepreneurs and certainly creative entrepreneurs feel alone. Because they're good at their creative part, but they're not necessarily good at like writing the business plan or doing the QuickBooks, but that's okay because you don't have to be. Like, you can learn a little bit about it, and you should know a little bit about it. But you don't have to be the professional of every single hat you wear,
Well, yeah, and you wouldn't want that to be the thing that stopped you from taking your first step,
Right.
Because like that,
Yeah.
I don't know, we that's us all the time. We're trying to figure that stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. Really, like,
Thanks
I
for
think
listening. Thanks for
appreciate your
asking.
openness
Thanks for
to chat
caring.
about it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything specific that you would like to say or impart to your customers or to the community, or like just anything as we're wrapping up, or just shout out?
Well, yeah. I mean, shout outs to all the customers, all the vendors, all the small businesses that, my employees, my parents. Shout out to you, my mom. Yeah, it's important to have a good support system, and I feel lucky enough to have one. And yeah, I'm pretty thankful. Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, we look forward to seeing what might be next for you, and we wish you the best.
There will be announcements,
Okay.
and there's something to announce.
Yeah. Well, you take it easy too.
Yeah,
I'm sure
until
that the
then, like,
chaos
I'm
of,
gonna have, Christmas with my family.
There you go.
Ring in the new year. New transformation.
There you go.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for
And-
having me.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks. Here.
We did it.